OMA is indeed a work in progress, and what I would like to do is reveal a little bit about how we work and especially how we think tonight, how we choose our projects, how we come across new stuff, and how we try to develop in a truly creative company and not so much an architectural company anymore. So I won't reveal any new architectural projects tonight, I'm afraid, but maybe there's something new for you. About 3-4 weeks ago, we had an evening with all the partners here in the Barbican. And we all together were interviewed, and as in preparation of that meeting, we were asked to sort out a picture that would best represent ourselves. And I choose this picture. This guy is Philippe Petit. He's a tightrope walker. This picture is taken in 1974. There's actually a beautiful documentary on him. He's balancing, he's juggling. He's also very much focusing, and he did something that nobody ever did before, and afterwards nobody ever did afterwards. It's daring. It's not so much saying much about me, but it's saying much about OMA, I would like to say. And that balancing act of OMA is actually the theme of part of what I'm going to show today. Prudence. It's a beautiful word, and if you ask people what it actually means, I actually did ask a couple of people, you don't get the same answer. It has at least a positive connotation, but maybe also something of conservative, careful, maybe a bit risk avoiding, or maybe the other way around. So as a preparation of this lecture, I looked it up in the Oxford Dictionary, and it actually turned out to be much nicer than I thought it was. It's good judgment or wisdom gained from experience and knowledge expressed in a realistic and frugal attitude. Keep that definition in mind. These are a couple of examples of things or events that were not so prudent, whether it's the dodo, who did not think about its future and did not think about defending itself, whether it's the internet bubble, Greece, defying financial gravity, News of the World basically defying truth, the Bank of Ireland defying reality, and Woolworths defying its clients. Did not work out for them. But sometimes it actually also may be perception, because if you look at the interest rates of Italy, they are sky high now, but there is nothing wrong with the economy of Italy. It's the perception that something is going wrong, and that also may actually very much influence how an organization or a country or an event is being looked at. This is the development of OMA's staff count, and if you look at it, actually it has been stable for quite a while. It started growing seriously in 2005, with a sort of peak in 2008. Thereafter, a pretty heavy slide. About 30% of our staff was laid off. That was during the first crisis, and now we're up and running again. Couple of things there. First of all, we decided that the first crisis, because we are now in the second one, was actually good. And we also knew that it basically would sort out part of the market. So we indeed let people go at that point of time. But at the same time, we had a sort of trust that we would survive and that we could build on basis of all the work that Rem and the other partners had been working on for the last 30 years. So there was quite a lot of confidence that we would survive. And that's pretty weird, because at the beginning of a crisis you don't know where the end is, you don't know where the bottom is. But we decided to deliberately keep ourselves bigger actually than the market was, and to maintain a certain quality to make sure that when that crisis came to an end, we would be very quickly on our feet again and basically capable of conquering the world. And that strategy actually turned out to be really fruitful. There is a second crisis. We read about it in the newspapers, but at the same time, we don't notice it, frankly. We are busier, more busy than ever. You never know, of course, so we are careful. And on top of that, it looks like we actually like this line going up, and that actually it's the other way around. We would like to stay as small as possible, but at the same time, we also do know that size matters. Since we have grown to a company of what we are now, so around 300 people, we noticed that basically we are capable of taking on every project that we want, that we are extremely flexible and indeed capable of also working in every country that we like. So maybe there is a double dip ahead, but we are still very much hiring people at this point of time, so growing. At the same time, we're also avoiding it, so there's a bit of a dilemma. But anyway, I guess this very much is the core of what my job is. I'm responsible for OMA, full stop. I'm the managing director. If something goes wrong, they come to me. But we have to balance. Obviously, we need a good economy in our company. And yes, we are profitable, but we are not a company that is profit-driven. Basically, the income that we have allows us to do the projects that we want to do. And it is very much what we want to do and also what is driving us. We are looking for projects that are of interest, that one way or another represent something that we don't know yet, that we have an intuition that it might represent something that in the future could become a new market. And basically that is the way on which we decide. We have a very clear strategy. All the partners precisely know what direction we want to go with the company. But at the same time, that strategy is broad enough and flexible enough to work on basis of intuition. And that is a good position to have, I would say. OMA is always in a balancing act, but it is a deliberate balancing act. We do not choose deliberately for only delivering either small or big projects. This is actually an example of Mackey Center in Glasgow, and the one on the right is the Rotterdam in Rotterdam, a building currently under construction, and it will become the largest building in the Netherlands. Also, we do not choose between only new buildings and very modern buildings, but also very much now focus on what we call preservation, so basically reinventing buildings that were built a long time ago and represent definitely cultural and economic value. We balance deliberately between public clients like the public library that you see on the left in Caen in France, and a new office for McKinsey in Hong Kong. We also balance between the future and the present, between Very Real, the Wiley Theatre in Dallas, and the other skill, urban planning, like Waterfront City in Dubai, which obviously had a high degree of imagination, inventing in a couple of months a city for 2 million inhabitants and half the size of Manhattan, with buildings that sometimes look like they come from a sky movie. It requires imagination. I would say so far so good. If you look at OMA, we are spread worldwide, very evenly actually. Of course, there is a focus on Europe, but in terms of both typology and also geographic spread, we feel that we are comfortably divided, and that is indeed a situation that we want to continue to pursue. How corporate is OMA? When I was hired, actually it was Rem who called me at a certain point of time and told me that OMA needed me, and he had to convince me a little bit actually. He said, what you have to do is turn our company, or turn our firm into a company. I hope I did, but at the same time we are also very careful, maybe prudent is the right word, not to turn too much into a corporate organization that is being driven by economic decisions. If you look at those two pictures, on the right side actually is the office of Foster's here in London. On the left side is our office in Rotterdam. There's not really much of a difference to see if you look at it like that. But this is also OMA. There's a lot of people who are really very much engaged, very much involved, and they really go for it. And it is especially also very much an office that is working in terms of really collective decisions and collective creativity. It's very lively, and we try to be very creative. The way we are organized is actually pretty simple. We work, I guess, like every larger architectural firm, with project groups. But we are an extremely flat organization. Basically, a trainee or a junior architect can have the brilliant idea. The partners are quite often a bit annoyed by the fact that we feel that everybody is overproducing, as we call it. But maybe that's a good thing to do, to have an abundance of good ideas and basically just pick the best ones. But at a certain point of time, I try to introduce what I called the 80% rule, because at OMA everybody wants to have the full 100%, and that means that you really, really have to invest to get to the best solution. And it's also known that for the last 20% of result, you have to invest 50% of your costs. So that is an economic rule that clearly does not apply for OMA. And when I proposed it as a sort of experiment, some people looked at me in disbelief, and well, that was the end of the story, basically. Don't try it at OMA. Also, something that we avoid is copying. When we delivered the Seattle Public Library, that was in 2004, a project that basically won every architectural award that there was to be won. I think we got about 20 requests from the market to also build a library like Seattle. And we did not have to hesitate a moment to say no, thank you. And actually we did not touch the library for the next 3 years. At this point of time, actually we are working on 3 or 4 at the same time. But we did not want to duplicate ourselves. You also will notice if you browse through the portfolio of OMA that there is no duplication whatsoever. OMA does not have a style that is immediately recognizable as being OMA. And for some architects that's obviously a bit different. On the other hand, we do replicate. If you look at the Casa da Musica in Porto, that is actually the recycling of an idea that we had for a villa, a house in Rotterdam, which turned out to be actually a very good idea. This is something that I really have to explain. We obviously very much are dependent on our people, and at the same time, every year 25% of our people move out of our company. So there's a huge brain drain in our company. But it's a deliberate strategy, because at the same time it's a brain gain. For us, it's extremely important to remain relevant in every sense, for the market, for creativity, for the cultural world. And that implies that we need a permanent influx of new ideas and new people. People who are educated in the best possible way, master the best possible techniques, and basically do understand what is really cool and going on in society. We are in an extremely comfortable position that we get 20,000 open job applications every year. We have a special department to handle them. And it gives us the opportunity to obviously cherry pick the best and the brightest. It implies that if you want to get going and to continue to refresh your organization, that on the other hand you have to let people go. In principle, people do not stay longer than 3 years at OMA. Everybody who comes with our company knows that. It's also a situation where they feel very comfortable with. One of the results is also that the average age at OMA is pretty low. It's only 30 years old, which is also not without a risk, of course, because you need a certain degree of seniority to also finish projects. So on the one hand, we have a very stable core of senior architects and associates, and on the other hand, we have a sort of tombola of people who come in fresh and fruity and go for it for 3 years. What you also have to understand is that OMA very much operates as a family. When people come in our office, quite often they have had 1 or 2 jobs after graduating, 25, 26 years old. No families, hardly a social network. Rotterdam, not really the center of the world. So basically OMA is their family, and that's how it operates. We see people coming in the office in the morning, having breakfast there, thereafter free lunch, at 9 p.m. dinner. They continue sometimes until 11 p.m. and then we kick them out if we see it. And thereafter they go to the bar, and what after happens, I don't know, I don't care. But it's really a family. The people who leave, there is a sort of nice habit at OMA that people say goodbye in an email to everybody, and I haven't seen one, but maybe they keep them away from me, who says, well, I had a lousy time the last 3 years, but I think it's going well. So this is how OMA's ecosystem works. We have a good reputation. We are actually extremely careful with our reputation. Maybe I should say prudent, which implies that we can really attract and hire the best staff, who in their turn put out the best quality, which results in great projects, which result in a great reputation, etc., etc., etc. So it's an ecosystem that is sustaining itself. And you have to be careful that you do not break that circle, because then you're in trouble. And therefore our reputation is something that is really holy for us. It takes a long time to win it, and it can go easily, as everybody knows. The balancing act. For me as a managing director, it's also a pretty complicated job sometimes. Obviously there's REM, and then there's the other partners. I try to keep that balance, and I think it is going well. In our company, it's very well understood that you cannot sustain a company if it's dependent on one architect. And that's also actually very well understood by Rem himself. So already 3, 4, maybe even 5 years ago, we made preparations to prepare ourselves for a future in the end without Rem. That is not always easy understood by the market or by the press. There's very much a tendency to look at individuals, whereas everybody knows that architecture is actually very much a group process. That there are more than just one partner in the company, and they have to get used to it. If you look at those articles from the press, you see one that still states Koolhaas, then it moves to Rem Koolhaas's OMA, and now it moves to OMA completes, etc., etc. That's the way that we want to see it. OMA is deliberately not focusing on individuals, but presenting itself as a partnership. And the good thing is actually that we have a name that represents that, unlike Foster or Rogers, for example. Let's talk a little bit about our worldwide strategy. Sometimes it's a strategy that is deliberate, and sometimes it's also started by coincidence. In 2001, OMA was still a pretty small company. We were about 70 people. And at that point of time, it happened to be that we were working on 4 projects in the US, and hardly any projects in other countries. So we were at that point of time very much a US-based or US-focused company, I should say. And then, of course, that happened, 9/11. And a year later, and 2 years later, basically all those projects disappeared, vaporized. That, by the way, is in a period that I was not yet with the company. But the company realized that it really had to change and deliberately look for other markets, and also spread its risk to make sure that that would not happen again, because at that point of time it was really in financial trouble. And basically what OMA did is it followed the market. The Far East, very much a growing market, with a lot of square meters to be built, was the direction that we also took. In 2002 we got 2 invitations to participate in the competition for the new Twin Towers, the new World Trade Center in New York, and simultaneously a somewhat unclear organized competition for the Chinese state television headquarters in Beijing. And OMA did not have to think twice to choose for CCTV. And I think that has been one of the best decisions that OMA has ever made. The building is there. Because in China, that's where it's happening. Actually, that is also where it is happening now in a reverse way. If you look at the market developments over there, then we notice that it is becoming an extremely mature market, and that foreign architects start fighting for projects on basis of fees instead of quality, a situation with which we obviously do not feel very comfortable, but at least there is still a market there, which you cannot say of Europe and to a lesser extent of the US. Working in countries like China, basically following the market, also brings up another situation. Being dragged into discussions about how good or bad it is to work in countries like that and for public entities and the authorities in countries like that. It's a discussion that we very much follow and also engage, because the decisions that we do take very deliberate and knowingly. And the fact that we have chosen for building CCTV also was on basis of the knowledge that we knew that it would become one of the signs of power of China, and especially of the Chinese authorities. And it's precisely the way that CCTV was used as a symbol of the new China. It even ended up on stamps, be it for a counter value of about 10 pence, so maybe not that powerful. But obviously, CCTV is also the voice of a system or a regime that is not precisely democratic. We knew that, but at the same time, we took the decision in the hope and also in the expectation that China is not only changing in an economic way, but also in a political way. And it's interesting, actually, if you Google the word censorship and CCTV, what then pops up? It's indeed our building that pops up, but also Obama, and for some reason also M&Ms. So I don't know. But, it's also very much about perspective, because we look at China as a country that we don't really understand, that we see as authoritarian. And of course, there's quite a number of people worldwide who think negatively about China. To be precise, in a poll, 66% does not think very favorable of China. Interesting enough, that same poll, if you ask about the European Union, it's 78% who thinks negatively. So it's all about perspective. It depends very much from which side of the world you look at a system or a country or an ideology. We designed a building which on the one hand would represent the mouth of a government, at the same time with a public loop in it. So basically opening up a building for the public, exposing that building and the process that what's going on in that building to a broader audience. That public loop is in that building and it will be used. The building, by the way, will be opened in 6 months from now. I guess it's a bit the fate of architects that they have the most work, at least if you talk about international architects, they have the most work in countries that grow the fastest, and it happens that the fastest growth is happening in countries with a non-existing democracy, or at least what we call a pseudo-democracy. I don't know precisely how that happens, why that is, what the precise reason is, but I guess it's because those countries are basically run as companies instead of as democracies. Democracy is costing time and money, and that's not good for the economy. Again, if you look at those markets, it's always very much about perspective, how you look at the world. This was, I believe, a cartoon from the New Yorker, The World According to W. Yeah, what can I say? Yeah. This is a project in Libya, on which we worked until a year ago. Did we consider the regime in Libya? Yes, we did. But this is not a project that we did for the government at that point of time. This project is called Kadames. It's a historic site. Actually, it's a UNESCO heritage site. The project is meant to protect that site and at the same time to have the local population benefit from upcoming tourism. Not a bad cause, I would say. The same project from another perspective. Of course, when you have a high profile, some people will say something about it. And that's all fine, because I think that architects, at least some architects, have an opinion about the world. So the world is also allowed to have an opinion about architects. That's all fine. At the same time, it sometimes feels a bit sour that that precise regime that is so much so evil was during that precise period also entertained by the people who are really powerful. So what is good and what is not good? It's a fine line, it's a balancing line. Balancing. It's also inherent in our organization. Everybody knows OMA, already there for 38 years. Very much about building physical stuff. It's the real world. And on the other hand, we have a virtual world. And the mirror of OMA, AMO, is taking care of that one. That is the precise reason why we have AMO. Also here, a strategy that is not started on a very deliberate note, but more or less as a coincidence. This is a list of part of the projects that we produced in the last 20 years. Projects that we worked on very hard, in which we put a lot of energy, time and creativity. And these are actually the projects that were realized, and the rest, one way or another, fell on the wrong side of the line. Either because we did not win the competition, either because the project was stopped, because the client went bankrupt or changed his mind, etc., etc., etc. It's an enormous waste of creativity, and we were looking for an outlet, and that became AMO. At least that was what AMO initially was about. Nowadays that's different. It still is used to recycle ideas of OMA in an other realm, in a virtual realm. But at the same time, it's using the way of thinking of OMA in another direction. It has really become an independent entity, and it is OMA's strategy to balance out AMO and OMA in the next, let's say, 8 years. So in 8 years from now, our architectural activities and our virtual activities, if I may call it that way, should balance out. Not to the detriment of our architecture, but by basically growing AMO faster than OMA. Also there, you have a nice ecosystem. AMO feeding OMA and OMA feeding AMO and the other way around. The nice thing about AMO is that it allows us to move around and start to understand issues, topics, stuff that we do not know anything about, at least when we start. We build up a lot of expertise, whether it's fashion or preservation or sustainability, the 3 examples that I've shown here. Those were all topics that when we started that route, that itinerary, we were completely blank about. That has changed. I think that we have now 5 or 6 major fashion brands in our client base. We do preservation projects all over the world, and we are known as an entity that knows quite a lot about sustainability, which is nice because it's bringing us new projects, and not only AMO projects but also architectural projects. OMA and AMO is very much about networking. We are on a permanent quest for new partners, new people with ideas, new entities. It's very much an organization that is looking at the world to see what's going on and what we could take from that, what is interesting, and how we could bring it to something that in the end is also economically sustainable, to basically make a product from it. I think this is only 1% of our network. Basically, the partners and associates of OMA are on a permanent networking mission, which is nice, but at the same time it's also extremely tiring, because networking also implies that you have to support and sustain those networks. This is part of a report that was brought out by RIBA. And it is looking at the development of architects and architecture in general. And it's wondering what roles architects would have and architecture would have in 2025. And one of the things that they conclude is that architecture is moving away from its traditional way of working, and that architects are becoming more fluid, working in collectives, but basically also becoming consultants rather than very much caring about built environment. RIBA also wonders how architectural practices would change by 2025. Well, I've got news. That's 14 years too late. If you're not trying to reinvent yourself now, then I don't think you have a very bright future, because in terms of architecture, especially in Europe, the market is not looking very promising. That's something that OMA has realized, and that's the reason why we are also trying to reinvent ourselves. That goes with ups and downs. And I want to show a couple of examples. First of all, one of the things that we did is we changed our name. We used to be the Office for Metropolitan Architecture, but OMA is now OMA. That's it. And of course, the old name is still being used, but not by us. By the way, that's also easier in headings, so you don't have to write Koolhaas anymore, but OMA also fits in a heading in a press report. One of the reasons that we are not so much moving away from architecture but looking into other directions is also because in the end architecture and especially star architecture is not delivering very exciting products anymore. It's a struggle, maybe not serious enough, or maybe you could also approach it from another side. There are other environments, other ideas that are more exciting than just star architecture. The examples that I show are in a sort of gliding scale. This is a study that Reinier de Graaf, one of our partners, did about how to organize a sustainable network in Europe to make it, in principle, energy independent. You could call this still a form of architecture because it's, I called it extreme master planning, which I guess it is. It's very much about politics. But it is still sort of close to architecture, I would say, at least intuitively. This is the flag or the barcode that we devised for the European Union. Very much about appearance still. But this is already something completely different. Business consulting, a business strategy that we devised for IKEA. Still looking at an organization from an architectural point of view, with an architectural eye, and based off architectural thinking, but without a built environment. Maybe the best way to show how the company developed is through one of our longest standing clients, Prada. We started working for them, I think some 10, 12 years ago. And initially, it started as an architectural relationship, if I may call it that way, because Prada invited us to develop, to design a couple of their flagship stores, their epicenters as they call it. Basically the way that they want to represent themselves to the outer world. Basically their way of saying, hey, this is what Prada is about. So one of the shops that we built is in Soho, New York, the epicenter. Beautiful shop, even after 10 years. Really nice. But it was also the starting point of a relationship that developed enormously thereafter. And that already started in that shop. It started with the material in the walls, which I think is still architecture. But Prada then also invited us to take care of the in-store technology, which we did. Thereafter, Prada also asked us to design their catwalks first, maybe more from a physical point of view. You need a room, a space where you can walk around and where you have an event. But it also very much became a marketing tool for them. It became what Prada wanted to look like. The themes that we are using in our catwalks are now also later represented in the shops in terms of, for example, wallpaper or material in the shop windows. This is an example of one of those catwalks. I'm trying to go and start a movie now, if that works. It's not working, unfortunately. I don't think it's working, unfortunately. Here we go. That's how a fashion show of OMA looks like. If you look closely at that fashion show, there are a number of things to observe. First of all, fashion shows traditionally are organized very hierarchically. Most important people sit on the front row, and thereafter lesser gods, and thereafter normal people, I guess. In this fashion show, and this catwalk, it was definitely not the case. Everybody was equal, sitting around. And also people, actually the models were walking in all directions, and you had to look from this to this to this, so it became a completely different experience. Something that Prada was surprised by, but at the same time also accepted. And it's a great example how intertwined organizations can become, because I guess that OMA would not have been OMA, or AMA for that matter, without that long-standing cooperation with Prada, and also the other way around. It's two organizations that have very much cross-fertilized each other. Another nice example, by the way, is this example. This is actually a test for another catwalk. The fishes that you see here on the floor are the route that the models need to take, and we were experimenting a little bit with other themes on the floor. Prada did not like it, but in the end they did like it because they copied it and put it in their fashion. So that's what happens, and that happens indeed when you need to develop fashion shows at the latest minute, because this was literally still wet when she was wearing it. What we're also doing is, for example, producing the Prada lookbooks. We also very much represent what Prada wants to be. And probably nobody knows, but we are also doing Prada's website. A little bit closer to architecture, but meant to be a marketing tool, is this project in South Korea. Prada wanted to enter that market with a big bang, and for that reason we devised the Transformer. It's a temporary building. It lasted for 5 months, and it was intended to be used for 4 different purposes. An exhibition, for a movie event, an art show, and some special stuff. And that's also the way it was being used. For every use, the entire structure was moved around by huge cranes. And every time that happened, that obviously attracted a lot of media attention. So Prada was very much followed during 5 months. For them it was a great success. This is an example of the fashion show Waist Down that we developed for Prada, and that has been going around the world. With Prada we are now closing the circle. This is a model of the museum that we are designing for the Prada Foundation, the art foundation of the Prada family in Milan. Let's take a little bit of a broader perspective. This index was devised by Harvard, and don't ask me how precisely they did it, but it shows one thing, and that is that innovation, the pace of innovation, is wearing off. It's gradually becoming less. It looks like the world is running slowly out of ideas. I don't know how you measure the impact of an idea or an innovation, but apparently Harvard found a way to measure that and to put it in a chart. But it's an interesting theme that you have to keep in mind. What you have to realize is that the way that Prada, or that Harvard looked at innovation, is actually innovation that is very much driven by technology. It's technological innovation. And maybe we are now at a situation where basically we are done with new inventions, and that everything is becoming basically invented already. So the world is finished. You could say that. At the same time, with a little bit of creativity and with much less technology, you can make an enormous difference. This device was designed by a creative firm, and it's literally saving lives. It's a life straw, and this device takes care that in principle dirty water comes out clean. At least it's safe to drink. In Africa, an enormous problem, but literally, as I said, saving lives. This is an app designed by a Dutch serious gaming firm. For an app is called Grip, and it's meant for children with diabetes. And by playing, they learn when they need to take care of new food and when they have to inject themselves, etc., etc. An easy way, and also something that makes lives of children much easier. Something else. Seniors walking around with walkers, they don't look very sexy until a creative firm looked like them. These are beach walkers. I would like to have one, actually. They look good. And also recycling. You can do it in any way. Recycle ideas, that's fine. But what is maybe more interesting is upcycling. It's a new movement which basically takes care of stuff that you don't know what to do with it anymore. In this case it was serving trays. There was a factory with an enormous amount of serving trays that they could not sell anymore. They didn't know what to do with it. And they asked a number of creative firms to think of new ways to use them. And this is one of those, a very nice suitcase. And they sell for a lot of money, I can tell you that. And I think that's actually, and this is also where I want to finish my story, is the way that we should look at society, not only as architectural firms, but for creative firms in general. There are many grand challenges in society, stuff that we have not been capable of solving. But mainly we have not been able of finding solutions because we very much looked at them as technical problems and also looking at them with technical eyes. So someone who is looking at a traffic jam, it's quite often traffic engineers who look at traffic jam and to solve it. And maybe you should not have a traffic engineer looking at a traffic jam, but have an architect look at them. Or a Steve Jobs looking at megacities, a digital pioneer looking at the problems that seniors have to make sure that they can live longer independently, or an independent mind to look at pollution. You never know. Maybe the world has run out of steam in terms of technological innovation, but I think that actually the age of creative innovation has arrived. There is a bright future ahead of us. It only means that we need to adapt ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. It's amazing. We do have time for questions. Is anybody, I'm sure you must have some questions. That was really fascinating. Thank you. Who's got some questions? We have a microphone. I got the impression, Victor, if I may ask something, that you've really got a vision for where OMA is, maybe you'd like to see it go. I mean, if you were sort of to restructure the company, or if you were able to do exactly what you wanted, where would it be?
Well, it's something that obviously we have been working on for quite a while. But only 2 years ago we took a very deliberate decision that we really wanted to grow also our non-architectural activities. And that's quite weird because it's like abandoning your child, which it was not, because we still very much care about the child, but basically we adopted another one and we're also caring that one. It still needs a lot of feeding and caring, but it's growing nicely, I have to say. So we have quite a number of nice little babies that are now delivering, I would say. But, so yeah, that is our vision, to become a truly creative company, creative in the broadest sense of the word, and indeed adding to innovation also in the broadest sense of the word.
Yeah. I think it was very, inspiring the way you could see the direction you evidently see it going. But still, when you come to OMA, it feels like very innovative and experimental and energetic. But still, it's essentially you're employing architects. I mean, do you think architects are the right people to do this kind of work?
Absolutely. I don't think it's about being educated in a certain way. It's much more about a way of thinking, a way of how you approach issues, problems, on the one hand in a very structured way, but at the same time also completely open and not afraid to take it from any angle that is possible. So not limiting yourself to certain to a certain direction of the problem. But,
some questions.
Does this work? Yeah. Hi. Thanks a lot for a really good talk. I've got a two-pronged question. One side of it's probably a bit humorous, and the other side is more serious, I guess. But I guess Rem Koolhaas is reputed for his subversive attitudes to various cultural aspects. And do you ever feel like you're part of some strange experiment that he's running on, how to test the limits of creativity in architecture? And I guess the more serious aspect is there's sometimes a distinction drawn between architecture practices that happen to do business and businesses that happen to do architecture. And do you feel in the current developments of OMA that there's a danger of that one identity turning into another?
Good question. Let me start with the last one. We are pretty careful about the way we develop ourselves and the way that we grow. we want an organization that basically allows us to do the things that we like. That is what it is all about. We want to be able to choose the projects that we feel are interesting, which of course is a pretty comfortable situation, and it's one that we can still allow now, but maybe in a couple of years not. The issue is that during a crisis, that is the moment that you know why you have a strategy. Before you don't really, well, you sort of have an intuition where you want to go. During a crisis, the strategy is really tested. OMA always has chosen to, on the one hand, be lean and mean, so being a company that wants to maintain as small as possible, a real niche player. On the other hand, we want also to have a certain size to basically take on the bigger problems, the bigger projects, not to have to say no to something that we felt was interesting but maybe too big to handle. So our mindset is already from, well, come on, guys, let's see, you can take it on. There is no, a no is not really possible in our firm. At least we always want to consider. It also implies that we do not do certain stuff that others maybe do. I of course also follow our peers in the market. For example, Foster, we encounter them quite often as competitors in the market. The fact that they have to pay off £45 million a year in interest scares the shit out of it. It's more than a complete turnover. It's something that we absolutely don't want to touch. We want a company that is driven by creativity and not by the fact that we need to deliver, because otherwise our people walk around without a job. That is very much what Deliver is. Then about REM, yeah, what can I say about that? We are all part of that experiment, yes.
You mentioned life after REM. It is difficult, isn't it, to imagine OMA without REM?
Well, maybe we should stay away from the idea of life without REM. It's like he's dying. The guy is up and running and definitely planning to do that for another 25 years, I believe. At least I did not notice any lethal tendencies in that respect. And he's also very much present, but he's clearly also taking another role in the company. You know, there are 7 partners now, so there are 7 captains on the ship, and they all have a different role. And it is clear that REM absolutely still has a very distinct role in the organization. At the same time, he also is doing certain stuff not anymore or stays away. There are many projects within OMA, probably not many people realize that REM has never seen, or, well, he knows about them, of course, but they are not his projects, clear. It is an organization that is already on the way of organizing itself and developing in an organization that can also work and operate without REM. And the fact that we have quite a long time to go to further develop that and to grow that and to mature that is a comfortable situation. It's not that there is a sort of emergency going on. It's not really top of mind, frankly. But,
Victor, thank you very much for an interesting talk. My question is, what are the biggest challenges of managing an international organization?
Well, it's very good that you indeed mentioned the word international, because that is indeed what is probably our largest problem. It's not so much, well, there's a couple of issues, but in terms of international, being so international, and we work in 35 countries, it implies that you have to reinvent the world, your work 35 times. You're working in different legal systems with different political issues, with different clients who look differently and in a different culture. It's all fine, but obviously it takes a lot of time to educate yourself and to make sure that you don't make mistakes. We have certain ways to make sure that we avoid those mistakes and that we are always on the good side of what I feel is always a balancing act, because there's only so much that you can afford as a small enterprise as OMA. One of the things, for example, is if we start in a new country, a country that we don't know, we make sure that at least 1, maybe even 2 people are on board, so literally in our office from that country, who understand the political system and basically shield us from stupidities. We always look in every country for local partners, and not just a local partner, but a party that we really feel comfortable with, that is trying to achieve the same quality and ideas, to realize the same ideas that we have. There's also very much a physical issue there. When I enter an airplane, sometimes I'm actually greeted by name by a stewardess because they have seen me twice already in that same week on that same plane. It's obviously extremely tiring, and Rem is even flying, well, he's actually flying much more than I am. He's literally living in a plane. It's also the reason why we are so far also staying away from certain markets, because it's just too much to digest for a small organization like, or maybe, for example, we quite often get invitations to do projects in Australia. It's just too far away. We've shied away for quite a while from Latin America. We only, I think 6-7 months ago, we made our first inroads there. Very successful, by the way. We have now 3-4 projects over there. But the reason was that we just did not have the people nor the appetite, or the gusto maybe, to take on another adventure, because that's what it is. You really have to engage a country. It's not that you hop in, you do something and you move out. Especially for architecture, you're there for at least 5, 6, 7 years in terms of operation, and that project is there for the next 50 years. So Latin America, for example, we entered Argentina, we literally sent someone up front to do market research and really find the right people for us for 3-4 months ahead. Basically bringing us the ideas and the people that we wanted to speak and engage in markets like that.
Hi, Victor. Thanks for that. I am fascinated by AMO in that it seems to a certain extent that it is going towards what is almost more of a traditional management consultancy, but in a creative field. Now, when it was established, clearly there was a creative desire to be able to do those projects. But it also seems quite a wise commercial strategy, in that when you look at the architecture, you have a certain amount of typological and geographic diversity, as you talked about. But AMO then gives you commercial diversification within the company as well. Now, it would just be interesting to see whether that was part of the thinking of establishing AMO at the same time.
The fact that we have AMO is definitely not commercially driven. It's because it's driven by curiosity. And actually that is also precisely the trouble that we have with AMO, if I may call it that way. Because we are entering fields that we do not know anything about. And that is quite difficult to sell to a client from, hi guys, here I am. I want to tell you a little bit about sustainability. By the way, I've never done a project like that. I don't have experts, etc., etc. It's quite a difficult sell. So the way that we take on projects like that is basically finding little projects, little ideas that we feel are worthwhile exploring, and then slowly grow it. The way that AMO started indeed that sustainability route, we now have done 4 or 5 larger projects, is by invitation of an environmental group who had some money and wanted an idea that really could attract attention, but also really a change of thinking about certain issues. First, it was clear that with that project we would never earn any money, but at the same time we knew that it would allow us to enter a new world, a world that was ready to discover, and where already many parties were active, because sustainability, of course, is hot, very hot. But a world that was being handled, indeed by technological innovation, by people who were already doing that for a long time and were looking for incremental improvements. Whereas AMO is taking always a completely different approach turn it around. Start with a blank sheet. It is not without risk. You know, there's so far so good, I have to say, but I'm sure that at a certain point of time we will also find topics that completely fall flat because we just are not capable of delivering the right ideas or the right insights.
When you came into OMA, you've been asked to change from a firm to a company. Which are the key changing that you managed to introduce?
So the question is
you've been asked to change from a firm to a company. The main or the key important changing that you managed to introduce to realize the change.
Yeah, actually I'm still very busy changing it into a company. At the same time, I'm not changing it at all. I think that one of the important things is that we try to maintain OMA as a creative entity. If you are with OMA or walk around, you will notice actually that it still has very much a studio-like atmosphere. It is small groups of people working in a very dedicated way, and it's not people who are thinking, well, okay, I only can spend 5 hours on this project because the client is not paying anymore, etc., etc. That's not the way that we work. What we do is combining creativity and economy at the same time by shifting attention not always to the creative process, but also sometimes to another part of that same ecosystem. And that works very well. It's also, in the end, I guess it's also a matter of psychology, that the fact that you prove that you are capable of delivering in time and on budget, that they feel that there is someone in the company that speaks the language of the economy. You know, I come from a very corporate world, I'm a lawyer by education, helps people to be convinced that if they engage OMA, that they are in good hands also economically. The issue with creativity is that it is very difficult to sell because you're selling something that you don't know what it is in the end. So what entrepreneur is willing to say, hey guys, you have a lot of money here and whatever you do with it, well, let's see. That's not the way it is. So first of all, I think it's very much about confidence. The idea that you're indeed capable, whatever it is, to deliver. So selling creativity is a process, a psychology, I would say.
Any other questions? One here.
Thanks a lot for lecture, and I was surprised to know that Remkos or OMA or AMO have some kind of education course in Moscow.
Yep.
And I just wonder, was it an interest or just like a way to enter Russian market to do this program?
No, well, it is indeed also a way to enter into the Russian market, but that's a nice byproduct. It is definitely not what has driven us. No, we were approached by a number of concerned, if I may call it that way, Russians, leading Russian individuals who were very much worried about the quality of education, especially the creative education, art education. They thought that the people who will become responsible for designing that society did not have the tools nor the mindset to really deliver, to really make a change into Russia. And that was basically the proposition that was brought to us. Can you devise an idea, a system that basically can change that, can give an opportunity for people to educate themselves in a different way, and especially to learn in a different way. Well, that's not a bad invitation to have. Of course, that is an invitation that you take on and that we experiment with. The good thing is that many partners and also associates within OMA do have a lot of educational experience. Rem, of course, is still a professor at Harvard. Almost all partners are lecturing around in the world, working either part-time or bringing lectures to many universities. So we know what is good and what is probably less successful. But delivering in Russia was, of course, a challenge that we had never taken on because we did not know, first of all, how that culture would react to us, whether it would fit, whether it would be a fit, and also whether in the end we would be allowed to do whatever we wanted. So far so good, I believe. The first class graduated last summer. The second one is now very active. Strelka is growing fast, and actually I lectured there 3-4 weeks ago. Seem to be very informed people, and it's also now a nice combination of Russians and also international students who mingle together and who also cross-fertilize each other. They learn a lot from each other. One more there.
Yes.
Yeah, I was intrigued by the staff growth actually, and how that shadowed kind of the patterns of Wall Street, and whether within your dynamic enterprise as creatives, you've questioned the kind of blueprint of your business model and how it may still rest on a very orthodox capitalist steely iron fist model, and whether there's, the goals about kind of world domination and the supersize is not everything, and whether there's other aspirations that you're now turning to in terms of the actual kind of fundamentals of maybe broken capitalism, and how that might influence your business going ahead for the next kind of 25 years.
Is that a remark or a question? Can you then reformulate that question, because I'm not sure how to answer
well,
it.
In a very nutshell, it seems that the business model is very much based on capitalist rules, and I wondered if you've questioned the making of that, i.e., business is typically all about kind of boom and bust and growth, and whether taking your man on the wire picture, whether there's a more equilibrium role that actually might be more fruitful, or whether you guys are able to produce some of these ideas and manufacture them yourself and play kind of patron and producer.
We are, it's a good question actually, we are working in a world in which we indeed do not always feel very comfortable. It is a market reality that we indeed, the world is capitalist, full stop, and it is a capitalist economy, and you need to work and find projects to operate in an economic way. I mean, we are a company in the end. The good thing is that, like I said, we are not a profit-driven company. What drives us is creativity. We choose our projects, we select our projects on basis of whether they are indeed interesting and delivering something in terms of creative or intellectual capital to our entity. But you can only do that if at the same time you also have that other side of the equilibrium. That is basically also that you need to earn money. So it's a bit of a twist always, and it implies that sometimes you do projects that are clearly already from the start loss-making, but at the same time they deliver something indeed that is what we feel is really important to us, that allows us to learn, to educate ourselves, to broaden our horizon. And at the same time, of course, also what we call the hardcore way of operating, that is delivering projects for which clients are willing to pay well. That's how it goes. But the good thing is that we do that only with projects that we like and that we feel comfortable with. We would never take on a project just because it's paying well. We must be able to deliver something that is also good.
Got to the end of the questions. Thank you very much. It's been really great having you do this, and it seems like OMA and Victor are marriage made in heaven. You seem to, be so much part of what they do now. It's wonderful. So, thank you everyone.